Hello, yfcmoreafrica. My name is Lori Edwell, and I'm the Director of Options Care Center in George, South Africa. We are a pregnancy HIV crisis center, and one of the things that we've recently really become more aware of is the significance of being a trauma-informed ministry. We're all wired for connection. God's made us that way. And we're not born connected, but we become connected. And so one of the things is that when we are tiny babies, we have the opportunity to say what we need. How does a baby do that? By crying. Basically, if they need their nappy changed, or they're hungry, or they need a hug, or cuddle, or they need winding, over and over, they cry to make their needs met. And the parents, the caregivers, are there to meet those needs and to comfort them and to help them to see and to experience that someone is hearing them, and that builds a secure attachment. So what happens when that's not there? What happens when there's a trauma? So it could be something like a stressful pregnancy or a difficult pregnancy. It could be abuse or neglect. It can be something like a systemic change, like poverty, or it can be a war. It can be a one-time event like an accident. So all of those things create trauma in our brains. And so it's a little bit like, this is the preschool version, that if you take my fist, and at the bottom of it here is the brainstem part of our brains. In the middle is more the emotional part, and at the top is the rational, intellectual side. We also have a part called the amygdala, which is at the base of our brain. And the amygdala is kind of the protector. When our needs are not met, whether it's as a newborn baby or as we get older and we've had a certain trauma, what happens is we trigger. And so the amygdala is the one that says, warning, warning, and our whole self, our brains trigger. It's like a shutdown, it's a fight, it's a flight, or even a fawn where you're trying to please and trying to make others happy. And so those responses began to create a system where the downstairs part of the brain grows stronger, but the upstairs part of the brain doesn't develop. And so in the end, those traumas and the triggers are so significant in terms of development. So understanding how these kinds of things affect both ourselves, but also young people, really makes a difference. And myself and Moni and Cora are going to just present briefly, give you an introduction to the principles. The one is connecting, the second is empowering, and the third is correcting. Knowing these things helps us to become more effective in our ministries, more effective as we work with youth, but even more effective in our home lives as well, so that we grow and we developed. Because in fact, all of us have things that trigger us. So if you have triggers, if I have triggers, we need to be aware of our beliefs and our thoughts and our behaviors so that we ourselves can get healing. We can't give what we don't have. We also need to look after ourselves. I know that with all the stress of COVID and all the pressures that we face in YFC ministry, it's so important that we actually learn how to fill up. When we're not caring for ourselves, it makes it harder for us to give from God's heart to our young people. In terms of connection, one of the things that people need is to go back, what does that baby need? That baby who's a newborn needs care, needs love, needs a soft touch, needs to be looked after. And so we also, when we're working with young people, what does that baby need? And so we need to ask, because negative behavior comes from an unmet need. And so it's to keep asking ourselves. We need kind eyes, we need a kind tone of voice, we need the ability to connect with people. And if you have one person, just one person, you can make such a difference. We began to build things like affirmation, blessing. We need to choose our young people. We need to include them. We need healthy touch, and all of those things will help that young person learn to calm themselves down and to be more of the person that God has made them to be.
So the empowering strategies is basic 2 strategies that you look after. So it's the physical strategies and also the ecological strategies. So when we look at the physical strategies, you need to first check yourself. Have you eaten enough? Is there enough protein in your diet? Is there about 2 hours after you ate your last snack? And also the youth that you're working with. Have they eaten a breakfast this morning? Is there enough protein in their diet? Have they slept enough? We also get more irritated and agitated when we don't sleep enough, and especially our youth are living in small homes and places where they don't sleep enough. Have you drunk enough water for the day? Take some sips, and that's also ways to connect with the youth, is by taking water breaks. Then we're going to look at the ecological strategies. What is it in the environment that can set a youngster off, or even yourself? When you look at your senses, is there too much noise input that might irritate you? Is there a smell or a taste that is in your mouth that is like quite irritating and you can't concentrate? So if those things are all in order, then a youngster or yourself can actually concentrate and engage with each other. And then we also look at the 3 internal senses: the vestibular, the tactile, and the proprioceptive. So if all those senses are well balanced, the child's downstairs brain will be ready to connect with the upstairs brain to concentrate.
So when it comes to the correcting principles, the important thing to remember is this is another opportunity for us as the youth worker to give care to this young person involved. We often respond to the child's or the young person's behavior, and that can sometimes get us into a power struggle, which we don't want. The first thing that we need to do is to ask ourselves the question, what does this person need? And as Cora and Laurie spoke about the connecting principle and the empowering principle, we have to make really sure that we have dealt with the needs of the young person, whether it's a physical need, whether it might be an emotional need, before we attempt actually to correct this young person or to speak to them about their behavior. All in all, it's still a caring intervention, even while we are attempting to correct their behavior. When we do that, we have to remember that we still have to have a soft voice, a soft gaze. If we're going to use a threatening voice, we might dysregulate that young person and they might want to threaten us first or threaten us back. And that is going to get us into a power struggle, which we don't want. We rather share power than seize power. It's okay to ask this young person for a redo in an authoritative voice, but not a threatening voice. And remember, we are the coach, we're not the warden. So remember that for some of us, this is quite a new concept, and it really takes practice, 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 and often it includes a redo for ourselves. These principles are very effective when we put them into practice, and it really helps us to build good relationships with the youth that we're ministering to.